we are going to move right on to our speaker. Some of you may know that the state's Democratic Party plan says that as a committee, we will remain neutral in a contested Democratic primary, which we do have in the 1st Congressional District this time around. We have Leslie Mehta and Herb Jones vying for the Democratic nomination. We're excited about them both. Couldn't be more thrilled. So we've asked Leslie to speak to us this month. We're having Herb next month, and we will continue to share any information with them that they give us, opportunities to donate, to volunteer, whatever it is their campaigns are doing or need. So Leslie, welcome.
Thank you.
Leslie Mehta is an attorney, former attorney with the ACLU, a long and impressive background, UNC graduate, Howard Law graduate. So Leslie, I'm going to let you do the big introduction of yourself, but welcome, and we're thrilled to have you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the introduction and the opportunity to be with you all today, to introduce myself and to tell you why I'm running for Congress in the 1st Congressional District. Though I've been living in Chesterfield for nearly a decade, I was raised in a no stoplights rural town in small town USA in North Carolina, where my parents, a social worker and correctional officer, struggled to raise my 2 sisters and me, often working long hours and multiple jobs. It was their tenacity and resilience that inspired me to turn my career towards law and the fight for equitable resources for families like mine. As Jen mentioned, I am an attorney, and I have been so for 20 years, most recently with the Richmond Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and before that, the legal director of the ACLU of Virginia, where I championed justice, equity, and fairness for those struggling because of discrimination. I fought to strengthen the constitutional rights of all Virginians, rights that are often as we know, are often under attack in this country, particularly now. I decided to run for office because our current representative, Rob Whitman, is ignoring the needs of families like ours, working families, and instead is focusing on pushing a radical extremist agenda alongside former President Trump and his cronies. I believe we deserve a congressperson who prioritizes getting things done, common sense solutions, and it isn't bowing to the MAGA crowd, which is why my focus has and will continue to be on ensuring access to affordable health care for everyone, regardless of income, making sure all of our children, no matter the zip code or skin color, have the ability to go to first-rate public schools, and making sure those schools have the resources they need to be able to succeed, protecting access to reproductive freedom, from quality maternal health care to the right to abortion, so we can make decisions best for ourselves, our families, and our futures. Enacting reasonable gun safety laws. It is far past the time to do something about gun violence. And there is no reason and no excuse for guns being the #1 killer of our children. Making certain every family can not just survive, but thrive. Good paying jobs, a reduced inflation rate, and having safe, affordable housing. And addressing climate change head on, so we leave behind safe and inhabitable Earth for our next generation. These focuses have always been issues important to me. But In 2017, when my then 2-year-old daughter, Brooke, was diagnosed with Rett syndrome, a rare, often fatal genetic disease, I started to advocate in a different way, and advocacy took on a whole new meaning for me. I realized that even with the resources that my husband and I had as 2 lawyers, it was incredibly difficult to get Brooke the help to which she was entitled. School and Medicaid, daycare, everywhere I turned, doors were shut, and navigating the Medicaid bureaucracy became overwhelming. When Brooke, my sweet Brooke, passed away in 2021, I decided to channel my grief. I began pushing back against an unresponsive healthcare system. With the support and help of Representative Abigail Spanberger, I helped pass federal funding for rare disease research and cures. Both Governor Northam and Governor Youngkin appointed me to statewide boards focused on racial equity and combating rare diseases. I took my experiences and I fought back. For Brooke, for my younger daughter Blair, for all of our children. And I'm ready to keep fighting because we deserve better. It's clear that our democracy is under attack by those who see struggle and pain, but instead vote time and time again for their own best interest instead of the constituents. Rob Whitman among them. This is the same Rob Whitman who voted to overturn the 2020 election and throw out Pennsylvania's votes hours after the violent insurrection at the Capitol. This is the same Rob Whitman who voted against throwing out serial liar George Santos. This is the same Rob Whitman who voted to delay implementing clean air standards and protecting the public health. This is the same Rob Whitman who voted against protecting women's access to abortions, to medication, and to contraceptives. And in 2023, just last year, when a group of other parents and I went to talk to both Democratic and Republican lawmakers about supporting the healthcare battles our children faced, this is the same Rob Whitman that shut his door on all of us. There is a lot at stake in 2024. As you know, President Biden and Senator Tim Kaine are on the ballot this year too. So we need all hands on deck to keep them in their seats and to bring back the House of Representatives under Democratic leadership. That can start here. This district is winnable. We can flip this seat from red to blue. The first is changing. Just look at the 2023 elections and the population centers like Henrico and Chesterfield and how they did. Yes, it's going to take a lot of dedication and hard work, but I've never shied away from that. And me and my team, we will work every day to ensure a professional, grassroots campaign. Yes, we will have mail and signs and campaign literature. I am going to be a candidate that you can be proud to support. That's my promise. And Jen, I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Questions, folks? If you do, just unmute and ask your question. Chris?
Comic, how are you
Oh.
going to beat Whitman?
Yeah, absolutely. So that for sure is the goal, right? So in order to do that, Mary, we have a several pronged approach. Obviously, we need to be able to invigorate the Democratic Party, making sure that we have the resources, certainly, but also the inspiration, the dedication. We've been having conversations with lots of William and Mary students. There are actually UVA students who are very much interested in helping where they can as well. And I spent last summer talking to lots of different Virginians who were interested in beating Rob Whitman, certainly beating President Trump. And they have been inspired by my story, quite frankly, and the story of, the hard work that I've done in the past and with my advocacy and my legal background. And they're willing to help. We already have many volunteers ready to help us with this process. It's not a one person sort of thing. I mean, as you know, Rob Whitman has been in office for 16 years. So that's one piece of it. And then, of course, the other piece, until it's not, it is important. Donations, fundraising, making sure we have the resources and that kind of investment as well. I have already been, I see Rachel is on, my finance director. We've been working really hard to get out our message to people. And again, it's been resonating. And people have been supporting our campaign. I have had a lot of my old law school friends reach out to me and show their support. And we already have, 4 on the books already, 4 fundraisers, Rachel?
4 fundraisers across the Commonwealth, Northern Virginia, down to Hampton Roads, across to the Northern Neck, where I'm from, Westmoreland County, the birthplace of Rob Whitman. And we're very excited out here at Northern Neck to flip VA1 blue.
Exactly.
Very
and
excited.
Exactly, Rachel. And I will tell you the other piece of that is that, as I said previously, the district is changing. We know from 23 that Rodney Willett and Skylar Van Valkenburg and Henrico and in Chesterfield, they did exceedingly well. I knocked doors for all of those folks over the summer, and they did really well and often being outspent as well. I think people are certainly interested in being able to vote for a Democrat who can get the job done. And that's something that I know how to do. As I've mentioned, I've done a lot of this kind of work as a lawyer, as an advocate for my own daughter and others. And I can do that for Virginians. And I'm happy to, continue that work. And I think with a lot of hard work and dedication, it's quite possible.
Thanks, Leslie.
Sure.
Jess, I see that your hand is up.
Yeah, so I think I'm kind of curious on the element and kind of to his question too, but what do you think your messaging is going to look like? Speaking to the voters, and what do you think your tactics, so like when you're talking about, the stuff that you're going to be putting out, whether it be emails or ads on the television or digital ads, what do you think your really central message is going to be on to inspire voters? And what do you think your tactics going to be for voter turnout?
Sure. So I think that it's actually already been resonating with constituents up and down, from Westmoreland to Williamsburg and Henrico and Chesterfield, particularly the fact that I know how to get things done across the aisle as well. Keep in mind, a lot of the new part of this district is Representative Abigail Spanberger's old district. So a lot of these people are looking, have been, and continue, and some of you as well, I'm sure, have been interested in seeing someone who can inspire Democrats and those independents who are seeking an alternative. I have worked as a state advisor for both Governor Northam and Governor Youngkin. I am on Youngkin's rare disease committee right now. And I've worked for Governor Youngkin on his racial equity committee. I've worked on both. And I've also gotten bipartisan support for rare diseases. I mentioned Representative Spanberger carrying the bill in my daughter Brooke's name for year after year after year. And not only am I proud of getting that done and raising $600,000 plus for rare disease research funding, but being able to do it in a bipartisan way. I will tell you that I was reaching out to Democrats and Republicans, and they were understanding the importance of this nonpartisan issue. We're simply trying to get funding for rare disease, and it resonated with both sides. And I will tell you, the only one who did not support that bill was Rob Whitman. He did not get back to us. I'm telling you, we got bipartisan support because it's just funding for rare disease. And I think that kind of lack of good constituent services in that regard, not listening to his constituents, which I was, by the way, and keep in mind, this was before I started, I decided to run for Congress. I was a mom of a daughter who had passed away from a rare disease. And as a board member on the International Rett Syndrome Foundation board, I was reaching out on behalf of these other moms and dads who wanted to get funding for a rare disease. And they essentially shut the door in our face. So I think what's resonating is the ability for me to work across the aisle, for sure, the ability for me to talk to people in all different locales. Look, although I'm not from the Northern Neck, I'm a girl from a town of 800. So I can resonate with the rural communities, and I've lived in Chesterfield for nearly a decade now. And I think those are the kind of things that have already been resonating with people. And I think it will continue to do so.
Jane, I see your hand is up. You're muted, Jane.
There we go. Hi, Leslie, this is Jane Barnard. A long time ago, we worked together at the ACLU, and I have this question, and I'll put it to Herb Jones next month as well.
Okay.
I worry when Democrats, as you just did, say all the right things about domestic issues and say zip about international issues. And sometimes I get it, and sometimes I don't, but I'll tell you, we don't have to go real far to say whatever happens this year, there will be international issues. Asia, China, North Korea, India, Pakistan, Middle East, God only knows by January of 2025 what will be going on in the Middle East. Europe, Ukraine. What's your preparation, and how will you set priorities? I'm not asking you to prioritize those issues or any other, but how will you go about prioritizing and getting up to speed on international issues?
First of all, thanks, Jane. I I appreciate it. Yes, and you were on the board when I was at the ACLU of Virginia. And I completely agree with you. We need to be talking about the international issues as well. I in some of the work that I've done at law firms, I've had to navigate some of those issues. And quite honestly, at the ACLU, I have had to navigate not only the issues that are kind of the bread and butter of the ACLU, but very tough situations that involve delicate issues. And I don't shy away from those kinds of things. So, look, I mean, it's just going to be a matter of keeping up to we have a great team. And I'm already obviously familiar with these issues as they have been in the news and that sort of thing. But I'm not going to shy away from whatever is happening across internationally, because that's part of the job as well. So in terms of priorities, I guess it's so hard to think about it in terms of the abstract, because we know from day to day there are things that are happening, like you said, in Ukraine. There are obviously, we know the tragedy that's happening in Israel and with the Israelis and the Palestinians, and we know all of these issues. And as things come up, I will not tread lightly. I will speak up to those issues as well, because I think that you're right. Though when it comes to Democrats, we do sometimes want to talk about the warm and fuzzy issues, and that's absolutely part of the things that I'm comfortable with. But I'm also comfortable talking about the things that are not so easy to talk about, and working on those issues as well. So I have a great team who's helping me, and I will not shy away from those hard conversations.
Okay, we're going to go to Carol Bender next, and then we'll go to Chris Mitchell. Carol, you're muted.
Yeah, no, okay. First of all, I want to give you sympathy for the difficult time you've had medically and your loss. I am a physician, and I apologize for tuning in late. I know that, and I'm on Whitman's list, even though I don't support him, etc. But all I hear from him is about the veterans and this one group. Now, Monty came close, and I may have missed this. Have you articulated any positions? Nobody really cares about working across the aisle. I think it's terrible what's going on, but have I missed you articulating any issues that many will care about? And
Did you say that many will care about?
right, they care about the economy. Healthcare in general is horrendous, but I don't even think people care about that. They care about the price of oil. They care about a pro-choice. You haven't even said what your position is on international things.
So,
I
first
missed
of all,
early on because I tuned in late.
so particularly when it comes to the economy, it's something that obviously we have to all be concerned about, and we are. I mentioned at the beginning about my background and my parents working several jobs to put food on the table. And I think it's very important. Look, at the Richmond Metropolitan Transportation Authority, until last month, I was the chief of staff and counsel to the CEO. And one of our biggest concerns, particularly being an organization who has really focused on employees, and there's a record of employees staying on for 40 plus years. One of our biggest concerns was making sure that the hourly rate for our toll collectors was addressed, discussed and addressed, and rose to the level required for people to be able to live and have proper housing, and be able to do things and, not necessarily be a multimillionaire as a toll collector, but at least be able to put food on the table and have a decent place to live. And I think things like the economic issues are certainly things that, are concerning to me, and I think it will be part of our campaign. And we've already been talking to people about that in the communities when we go out and talk to people.
What are you telling them? I mean, I'm well off. I try to stand up for medicine. I've been on licensing boards, and I really hate to say this. I'm the one, when I saw Youngkin, I explained to him why you needed abortions for medical reasons, up even to 34 weeks. And he wanted to put me on one of his committees, and I wouldn't do it. I don't want to help the enemy. But he did change his position after that to include save the life of the mother, etc. But what are the specifics? And not what you've done, what I've done. How do you tell somebody who can't pay their utility bills what you're going to do for them, or they
Yeah.
can't afford the education? And
Yeah, and so
I'm not being the devil's advocate. I wanted Monty to win in every which way, and I want to see you win, but I want to hear specifics for the person. Every day I read these things, they care about the economy, things like this, and we're not giving answers to the people that can't pay their bills.
well, let me tell you what I have done. At RMTA, we ensured that the bare minimum was $15 an hour.
Are you offering people jobs? Are you offering people jobs for that minimum? What are you telling the people
Of
who
course.
are working there?
Absolutely. Not only that was the bare minimum $15 an hour. One of the priorities that we made sure continued to be so was very almost 100% of the insurance premiums, because we all know, particularly with the RMTA's employees, particularly the toll collectors and toll supervisors, a lot of them were seniors who particularly were impacted by having high premiums. And so that's one of the things that we fought for with our board, and we made sure that it was done, because even if someone makes a decent living, if you're spending all of your money on prescription drugs, it doesn't balance out. So those are the kind of things that just realistically, to make sure that people can afford, a decent place to stay, that's important. The other part of that is affordable housing. I have worked, I actually had done many, starting many years ago, pro bono work for landlord-tenant cases. A lot of, and this is a particular problem in Richmond, as I'm sure you know. The eviction rate is out of control. And I've worked in the past as a pro bono lawyer. So I just brought my resources and was able to make sure that people were able to stay and advocate for them in their homes and not get kicked out unlawfully, which I think is a very big, it's obviously a big problem in Virginia as well. And so I think those kinds of basic common sense things to make sure that people have an affordable, safe place to live. They can afford to be able to put food on their tables, and they have access to quality health care. I think those are some of the big concerns that everyday people have.
$15 an hour isn't doing it, though.
It's not. I think that's the bare minimum. I agree with you. I think at the time, the RMTA was at maybe $10 or $11, and we had to sell it for our own employees, because you're right. I mean, it's the bare minimum, and we also wanted to make sure on that other end, like I said, to make sure that they had the HSA, the health savings account, to be able to buy prescription drugs, to not have to worry about going to the doctor when they really needed to go, and making sure that not only were they not paying outrageously high premiums, but also making sure that they had money in that HSA to be able to use for prescription drugs and their doctor's visits, which
I'm gonna
means
say one
more
last
money
thing
in their
is-
pockets.
But these are
You know-
people who are graduating college, graduating high school. The Democrats are losing the young people. They can't get jobs. They can't get jobs. What are you going to tell them that they should vote? And I am a Democrat. What are you telling them? Not this small select group that already has jobs.
Well, look,
How
I
do you
mean,
get
that,
new voters other than pro-choice?
I'm sorry, he didn't hear
How
last
do
part.
we get these young voters? They can't get jobs. They're living at home. They're educated. They want to work. They can't
And
even
that-
get jobs at McDonald's. That's saturated.
We probably can't figure out that question tonight. If we could, we'd all have jobs making a lot of money. I'm gonna
We
move
do
on.
need to address the inflation, and I understand what you're saying, Carol. I mean, and I know you need to go on to another.
And believe me, I
person.
appreciate your background, your intellect, what you've done for people. But to people, this doesn't relate to their needs.
No, I get that. I know when you're struggling to put food on the table, and I was one of those college students. I had to work throughout school to be able to eat and live and do all of those things. I agree with you. I think those are some of the challenges that we have to face head on, because you're right. I mean, I said this before. I know there are a lot of kind of touchy-feely good feel good issues that a lot of Democrats, myself included, like to talk about, but there are also the issues of dollars and cents and being able to put a roof over your head and be able to eat and live and have a safe place to be and have decent schools for your kids. And those are all issues that I will continue to discuss, because you're right. It's not just about the feel good ones that we talk about often. It's about those practical issues that everyday Virginians face. I completely agree with you.
Okay, we have Chris Mitchell very patiently waiting with his hand up.
Yep.
Hi,
Chris?
Chris.
Do you have a question?
Hello there.
Hey.
You understand that you serve for both governors. And I'm
Yes.
sorry I'm sorry for the loss of a family member of yours.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure that hopefully that we can win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I may have missed the ending. I heard something about you think that we can win. Was there something after that?
Yeah, we should. I think we can triumph over others when it comes to an election.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chris.
Look, yeah, I agree with that. I will tell you, Chris, that as I mentioned earlier, that the district is changing. And I think that with redistricting and with the current makeup, with it being an election year, a presidential election year, I think it's possible. And I look, and that's not just me saying this. I've talked to state delegates, I've talked to state senators, I've talked to lots of people in the community, politicians, local leaders, all of this, and they say that, you know, they've looked at the numbers too, and it's possible, as long as we make sure that we have someone dedicated, hardworking, who's willing to talk about the issues. And look, you know, Carol, I know all of what you were saying before, and I see what you mean about, you know, some people don't care about working across the aisle, but I think particularly for the those independents, those moderate Republicans who are looking for something other than the chaos, I think that they are looking for someone who can work on common sense solutions. And I think even though you said, about work, you didn't really like the idea of working across the aisle. I think implicit in your question and your comments is that notion of talking about kind of those real commonplace, everyday kind of issues, the kitchen table kind of issues, the things that people are concerned about, not just kind of the lofty ideas, but the things that affect everybody on a daily basis. So, but thanks, Chris, for your comment.
Leslie, we have a question in the chat. Do you support the PRO Act that Bobby Scott is a sponsor of, which I believe that gives workers the right to organize?
So what I will tell you is that I am definitely a strong proponent of organizing. Labor unions, we have been talking to many of the labor unions currently, and some are considering an endorsement. We're going through their process. I'm for, workers and employees and the rights, even when I've been part of the executive decision-making of an organization like it, RMTA. It's just one of those things that is important. And I feel like if the employees are taken care of, it takes care of the whole organization. And I think obviously labor unions have had a wonderful record of being able to push things forward for employees, not just for the ones that they individually represent, but for everyone. Obviously, we have laws about children working as a result of children not working as a result of things like that. We have, the standard 40-hour work week. All of these kinds of things come out of the sacrifices that others have done through labor unions. So I am definitely for that, the spirit of that. I have not, I will be honest, I don't know the specifics of the PRO Act, but my feeling about unions and organizing, I am definitely a proponent of that.
Do we have other questions? George?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, George.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. What are your views on when it comes to the recidivism rate that we have for a lot of offenders that they get out of jail and they try to get a job and they can't get a job? What are your views on trying to address things, to have some things in place? Because a lot of times it's not, that they don't want to work, we know that, if you've been to jail, you're supposed to let the people know that you've been to jail, and that's not supposed to stop them from giving you a job. But we know that it doesn't always turn out that way.
Yeah, so I will tell you that one of the law firms civil rights law firms I worked for, one of our main focuses was prisoners' rights and the rights of those after they are no longer in prison, particularly during that period of time when you are you're on probation. There are a lot of studies and a lot of articles written about the fact that essentially there are those who are stuck, even after they've served their time, they've paid their dues, they still have difficulties and challenges finding decent employment and being able to reintegrate back into society. And so I've done a lot of advocacy and litigation, quite frankly, around that. And one of the things that has been particularly interesting to me is having to tell employers about your felony past, particularly if it's been a significant amount of time. Because that, I mean, that alone will, honestly, some people will just throw the resume in the trash and move on to another person. But I am particularly keen on addressing that issue, particularly for those, as we know, this affects disproportionately Black and Brown people, and it's the ripple effect, and it's in some ways it goes back to what Carol was saying as well. It's that idea of, okay, if I've paid my dues to society, now how can I live as a decent human being and make a decent amount of money to be able to put food on the table for my families? And so you talked about the piece about recidivism. I think that part of the issue, part of the problem is that there are often situations in which people are not given the resources after they are no longer incarcerated. So it's, here's your stuff, go back into society, and good luck. Well, that's not enough. We need to be able to make sure that we are taking care of individuals in a sense, they've paid their dues, and now it's time for them to reintegrate. And it does not just, we can talk in terms of the warm and fuzzies, but it also is beneficial to society at large. If we're able to get this individual the resources they need to be able to move forward, then it means one less person who's maybe, trying to steal from the local grocery store or do something else that either brings them back to prison or gets them right back into those old ways that they had previously. And so, yeah, it's a very important issue, and there's a lot to be able to address there. Absolutely.
Well, I wanted to say one thing. When Monty was running, I met him at the Little Zion Church, and I asked him to have anybody ever thought about, because most of the time when people get out of jail and they have a felony, they can't find a job. Something to invest in them. Like we have people cutting grass, for the county, for the buildings, or different places. Has anybody ever thought about kind of setting them a program where you can set them up for success, where they can have maybe their own lawn care, and you direct them in the right way to be able to have their own, but still be hired by the county or the county to maybe cut the grass at a certain a building or a particular park or something like that. Then you would have something like, well, somebody that's been in prison would have a sense of pride because they become part of society. They would feel more connected,
Absolutely. And I think that there are states that are doing some of that now. And I think it would be very good for Virginia to be able to do some of that. I'm sorry.
I said, I've never heard of the state.
There are, so I know that California, and I don't know if it's through the government, that may be the distinction you're making. I know that there are nonprofits who help with that kind of work, particularly in California. But even then, I think you're right. It's a very good point in terms of it being part of the resources once one has served their time. So I'm imagining you're talking about a situation where they've done what they need to do, they're released, and as part of the continuing program, they are given opportunities to be able to have their own. I'm sorry, you're muted if you were saying something.
that to me, that should start inside the jail, or you know what I mean, before you get out. That you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are, I will tell you, there are people doing the good work of, making sure people have access to, be able to get a GED, a high school diploma, the trades. But you're right. I mean, there are good people doing it with small nonprofits, but I see your point in terms of something larger and a broader system. And things like that could potentially be pretty effective. I
Mhm.
understand. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Leslie.
Mhm.
We're gonna make that our last question. Whew, we threw a lot of questions at you tonight, and we're grateful you stayed and answered them all. We'll be watching your campaign. Please
Thank you.
keep in touch, share with us what you're doing.
I will
And
absolutely
we
do that.
applaud you for stepping up.
And I thank you. I appreciate that. And I will tell you that my campaign manager, Hannah, is on, and I know she said she would put the information in the chat. So I hope that people got that as well. Yeah, I see that, John. And feel free to reach out. This does not have to be the last time that we talk about the issues that concern you. And if there are things that you feel that I should be considering, please do reach out and let me know. I'm still in the learning processes, and I have a lot of ideas, but I'm open to what others have to say as well. And I will say once more time, Jane, thank you for talking to me, and thank you for your question. I appreciate everybody's questions and the issues that you're wanting addressed, and I look forward to continue the conversation. I appreciate it.